Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237. Coming at you with another review of a silent film from the 20s. And it's a French film, and it has to be one of the strangest films I've ever seen. It is a film by Louis Bunuel. Chien Andalou, I believe is how you pronounce it, which is French for An Andalusian Dog. And it's a short film. I had the cover on my phone because it's in the public domain, so you can find it on YouTube. That's how I saw it. There's two different cuts. One that is 16 minutes, one that's 21. I watched the 21 version. Different soundtracks. I say strangest film I've ever seen, but I don't. It doesn't really sound fair to say because it is an avant-garde, surrealist film. Kind of like say Eraserhead is like the weirdest movie of the '70s, which it is. But I feel like if it's surreal and avant-garde, it's supposed to be weird. So, um, the unfortunately, um, I have not been able to find a version that has English title cards. But just going through a Wikipedia, because there's not very much dialogue as far as title cards go. It's usually just telling you what time frame we're in. And there is some sort of story. It is trying to say something. But yeah, just it doesn't have. It has a story, but it is not told in the conventional narrative at all. In fact, it uses what's called dream logic and free association, which means it's essentially a cartoon. I mean, anything goes. I believe the the director, Bunuel, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Uh, he sounds kind of like a pretentious little. I don't want to say hipster of like the 20s, but just like a guy that has something to say. Just like I just want to give the middle finger to yeah. Like a beatnik of the fucking 20s. Because I was reading about it, and what was it saying? He wanted to make a movie that was a big fuck you to like French bourgeois, but he was really pissed off when the French bourgeois actually dug it and saw it as a good form of art. And this was his quote. I thought this was interesting. What can I do about the people who adore all that is new, even when it goes against their deepest convictions? Or about the sincere, corrupt press in the inane herd that saw beauty or poetry in something which is basically no more than a desperate and passionate call for murder? So to me, he's basically saying, like, it's almost just like, a vamped up version of a kid who's trying to piss off his parents. Like, Mom, like, hey, guess what? I smoke weed. And they're just like, yeah, so do we. What kind of stuff you got? He's just, like, he just stomps his foot. He goes up to his room. So he was trying to make this rebellious movie, and it ended up not really being a hit, but people liked it. This was sort of the start of the surrealist movement, even though I don't really know any other films. Um, Actually, there's a lot more that I did read. Um, some people did try to ban it. And then in his old age, people saw him as cruel and start to threaten and insult him. Apparently, someone tried to say 2 miscarriages occurred while watching the film. Okay, so apparently the hardcore left existed back then too. Just make shit up to get shit banned. Huh. Well, this makes sense. Uh, David Bowie showed it during his 1976 tour in its entirety. He had that instead of an opening act. It did have a sequel. Uh, wasn't really a success. He even, I guess the sequel had like a rapist, murderer, and fascist shout, "Long live Hap," HAPP, in all caps. So yeah, he was just kind of vindictive his whole life. Now, I would say I liked this movie. It is very trance-like. You can kind of, it was 21 minutes, but it felt a lot longer because it's kind of like when you're staring off into space because you're thinking about something. It's like you're looking through whatever you're looking at. Just, it is like a dream world. I mean, it does have obnoxious kind of music, like this really like upbeat, happy French music, even during weird parts. I mean, like it opens up with a guy looking up at the moon. He's got a straight razor, and I think this image is what it's most famous for. And then there's like a young woman just kind of looking straight, and he comes up behind her and he takes the razor. But when it gets here, it cuts back to the moon, and then it cuts back to what's obviously like up close of like a goat with the eye being cut. A real goat's eye being slit with the uh, fluid coming out of it. So that, I mean, for back then, that was outrageous. And we seem to, it did have something to do with like women's rights or something. Like, other people of the surrealist movement was disappointed that no riots ensued and it was less exciting. Um, I was reading something earlier about something about like women's position or something, but basically it then cuts to like 8 years prior. We see that same woman because I think we're supposed to believe it was her eye that was slit. She looks out the window and sees a young man riding a bike in a nun's outfit, which Simone Merwill, I'm I have a hard time with French names. She plays the young girl. Pierre Batchef plays young man and second young man. And the director himself plays the guy with the straight razor. Salvadore Dali? Why does that name sound familiar? That's the guy that was pissed that there was no like riots. Oh, he was a big painter, a surreal painter. Anyway. And there's just like weird parts where like she looks out the window and he's like wrecked his bike. So then he's in the apartment. It mostly takes place in this apartment. She lays like the clothes out and he's standing by a door looking at his hand. And she comes up and the hand has like a hole with ants coming out of it. Other parts where like he's chasing her around the apartment and she's like in the corner. Then he just like picks up these ropes that's attached to two grand pianos with, you know, tablets of the Ten Commandments, dead goats with the eyes cut out on top of the pianos, and like young priests lying on the floor tied around their necks to the pianos. And he's like dragging it, trying to get to her. And then it cuts to like them in the beach, and it jumps like 8 years ago, sometime later than like 16 years ago, but the actors and characters stayed the same. Really strange movie, but you know, I dug it for its artistic value. I guess it's not really a fair review because I don't really know what was going on. I couldn't really read any of the title cards. The title cards were subtitled, but they were in Spanish. There was also a scene where the young man, a woman wrecks her bike or wrecks her car or something in the street, and they're looking out the window, and he seems to be turned on by her being in jeopardy. So there's like a part where he's like fondling her. She's just standing there. And then there's like a dissolve shot where her clothes are completely gone. So you have, you know, sexual nudity where he's like fondling her. Then it cuts back to clothes on, crossfade again, but I was doing it to her ass. So like for 29, that was also really fucking hardcore. Especially considering how this was like 30 years before married couples couldn't even be shown in the same beds on TV. So, yeah. You can definitely tell it's a movie that's trying to push the envelope, is trying to push buttons. I would have liked to know what the story was. There's really no other horror movies of 1929, so I was kind of curious. Well, I guess there are a couple. Like, I think there's one called The Bat Whispers that I was going to check out, but this one was only 21 minutes, and Cinemassacre was doing a rental review video, and they're talking about goriest movies ever, so he was talking about old ones, James Rolfe was, and he mentioned this, so figured I'd check it out. I can say I've seen another silent film, even though I had no idea what was going on. But you know, it did remind me of like David Lynch, Eraserhead, which I love Eraserhead. I'm not very big on the surrealist movement, so I don't know if this counts as like a horror film. But anyway, Chien Andalou, probably pronounced wrong, but thank you for watching.